begin by saying Happy Veterans Day to all of you, especially veterans out there. Happy Veterans Day. I was over at my dad's house yesterday, and I was inviting him to be here today because at the end of the service we're going to be honoring veterans. And he said he'd be here, and my dad is in the back there. He's 92 years old. Veteran, and he says, "So, okay, Bruce, so the sermon's going to be a good Veterans Day sermon." And I go, well, Dad, I'm going to be talking about stewardship and that stuff, but we have a Veterans Day prayer at the end." He says, "Oh, that's good enough." But, you know, I was driving home and I was thinking about stewardship and generosity and giving, and the fact is that the veterans of our country are just great, generous, wonderful givers, the best givers to our country. So thanks, veterans, for all of your great giving to our country. So, is that good enough, Dad? Yeah, good. All right, so what I want to talk about today really is this widow that we encounter in the gospel. This is one of the most familiar stories in the Bible. Probably most of you have heard it before. And the story is often used as the text for preaching on giving to the church and on Stewardship Sunday. Interestingly enough, I did not pick this lesson. It was set in our lectionary for me. Interestingly enough, this Sunday is our kickoff of our annual stewardship campaign and our capital campaign. Lucky me that I have this great reading to preach from. Well, you know, I don't know. The more that I have looked at and struggled with this gospel story about this poor widow, I think it's really, really a complex story. And I'm not sure how clear it is about her giving. The story, as you just heard, is preceded by Jesus' words of condemnation to these scribes who like to dress up and look fancy. And he says, take advantage of widows. In fact, read in this context, some scholars suggest that really Jesus' words to this widow about putting her offering into the treasury really isn't praising her. Instead, it is a lament. Jesus is lamenting the fact that this poor widow is put in this position where she has to give everything away. He's lamenting the fact that she is being oppressed by a corrupt religious system. Now, other scholars disagree with that. And still other scholars, good ones I might add, say that really the point of the widow's just overly sacrificial giving is really to point to the conditions for following Jesus, which is just giving yourself away, abandoning self, so that one can follow Jesus. So as I thought about this story, I was wondering, well, is it about giving generously? Is it about a woman who's being exploited by a corrupt system? Is it a model for all of us to follow as we give ourselves away in the service of others so that we can follow Jesus? Well, you know, maybe it's some of all of those. But the thing that struck me most about this story as I sat with it for a while is it seems to me to speak about community, about being connected to people around you. It's about realizing that we are in this journey together, and we all need to find ways to somehow care for and take care of each other, even folks who are unfamiliar to us. And for me at least, that's the connection to our giving to support our church here. Giving to our church is about supporting our community, not only for our sake, but for the sake of others. One of the things that strikes me about the scribes in this story is they only seem to be concerned about themselves. Their sense of well-being appears to be measured on how well they are doing. Do they look right? Do they have all the accolades being showered upon them? Do they have all the resources they need? And surely, part of our well-being is, do we have enough to eat? Are we taken care of? And all of that stuff. But I think Jesus pushes us all to understand that well-being, our well-being, is more than just how am I doing? It's how are others around me doing? How are other people in the community and the world doing? That's part of my well-being. But it was these scribes sort of such focus on themselves that I think caused them just to look over this poor widow as she was in their midst. Now, many of you probably know that this past week, and again this week, our church is once again hosting Winter Nights, a project of the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County. And the program runs from October through May, and it is hosted among a variety of faith communities here in our area. And what each community does, each faith community does, is provide a clean, safe, warm place for homeless families with children to stay during these winter months. It's a good program. It's a really, really good program. And I'm pleased that our church has been a part of it for so many years. It is a great way that this community reaches out and realizes the needs of the greater community around us. It's just not about us. It's about others in this community, and we have something to offer to make their lives better. One of the things that I got to tell you that I just love about this church is this versatile, flexible space that we have here. This space is going to be used for a dinner tonight. We're going to rearrange it, and it's going to be a fabulous dinner tonight. It's been used for plays. It's been used for fundraisers. It's been used for concerts. It's been used for dances. It's been used for youth groups sleepovers. Small groups, large groups meet in it. Many years ago when we started with Winter Nights, hosting it, there was a wall that was right here, and you all would be in a room that we called the fireplace there. And we had so many homeless folk that we didn't have room for them there, and so they all came into the church, and we just shoved all the chairs over to the side, and they just slept in here, and then we got here real early Sunday morning and put them back up. You know, that's pretty neat. Very, very few churches that I know of have the capacity or the will to use their sanctuary like that in so many ways. So I want to say thank you for letting this church be used in that kind of fashion. But it's just not our church, right? It's used in all kinds of crazy ways. All right, we have this new beautiful parish hall, so we have our homeless families over there, and they're taking up that whole beautiful building, and that's wonderful. But during the week, that building is used in all kinds of ways. My favorite example is the plaza room, which on Sunday morning is the place where our godly play class for the children in our church school meet. Later in the afternoon, usually there's a group of adults in their meeting. Then later in the evening, there's usually sometimes the youth groups running in and out of there. Or there's another adult class. Then in the week, that same room is used by a group of women who put together comfort aids for cancer patients. It hosts Bible studies, a centering prayer group. The same room is used in all of those kinds of ways in the parish hall. Yoga, Boy Scouts, all kinds of meetings, groups, using the same space very, very flexibly. And then up there, our community room, what we call our community room, where church school is today. Think about that room. During the week, during the day, our preschool calls it not the community room, it is the run room. And they run around in it because it's a great place to horse around in it and to paint. And then when they leave, all their stuff is shoved aside, and it becomes a place for A-Day and NA and some crazy senior card players in our community that we've inherited temporarily from the senior center. And starting in just a month or two, the National Alliance of Mental Illness will be using that room for a class on Thursday night to help families who have a member who is struggling with mental illness. Lots of good space. In fact, I was trying to think, is there a space in this church that one group gets to use only, and they're the only ones that get to use it. And I just couldn't think of it. I mean, there's the nursery, but a couple weeks ago I went by it. There were 5 people in there meeting. I don't know what the heck they were doing. But they were meeting. And then, about a month ago, I come by my office at night, and there's people meeting in it. And that is fine with me, but here, let me tell you, if you're going to meet in my office, please let me know. And I say it because it is a very, very dangerous place. There are paint cans, sometimes there's power tools, there's all kinds of stuff. It is not a child-friendly place. So let me know and I'll try to clean it up before you use it. But my point is, space around here, it's everybody's space, and I think that says a lot about us and our community and how we want to use it. I like to think this is a really practical church. We use things in a very practical fashion. We're not fancy. I think it's pretty beautiful, but it's also very functional and very practical. I was thinking too, you know, the early Christians needed places to meet, and they needed to find ways to support their ministry. We have clear evidence that already by the time of the Apostle Paul, perhaps the earliest writer that we have, who was decades ahead of any of the Gospels in his writings. And in his letters, he thanks people for their generosity, for supporting the church. In Romans, he thanks Phoebe, who was so generous to support the church. And people opened their homes to support the church. So early on, Christians realized that if they were going to do ministry, if they were going to do what they needed to do and felt called to do by God and Jesus Christ, they're going to have to be generous. They're going to have to share, and they're going to have to give. And all of that is to say that Christians understand that generosity is part and parcel of who we are in terms of our ministry and our worship. And I'm pleased that this is such a generous congregation. I'm pleased that this is a congregation that really tries to reach out and let our church be used and embraced by the wider community. And it's one of the reasons that I feel so darn committed to annual stewardship, to giving my money every year to this church, and why I feel so committed to our capital campaign. Because it's about ministry. It's about making sure that ministry can go on here for many, many years. The bishop that ordained me, Bishop Swing, used to say, Bruce, money is ministry. And I really struggle with that. And I think he's partially right. I never disagree with him anyway. Money helps ministry. How's that? There's lots of ways that ministry happens, but money does help it. And I want to thank all of you for helping this church be the kind of place, through your money and through your hard work and your talent, where a heck of a lot of ministry happens. So you all should feel proud about that. So, let me just sum up here. So what the heck does all this have to do with the gospel today? Like I said, I think it's about community and realizing that we're in it. The rich scribes and the poor little widow. And you can't overlook each other. The scribes that Jesus mentioned seem to have a fairly narrow view of community. And one of the things that I think we need to push ourselves more and more about is to realize that we are doing all of this not only for ourselves, but for others. It's not only how we're doing, and I want everybody in this church to do well and to be comfortable, let me tell you that. I also want to think about what's everybody else around us doing, and what can we do to help. Is our church a place that supports the well-being of others? I know it does. I see it happening here all the time. And I want to make sure that that happens not only this coming years, but for many, many years to come. I want to see it be a place where people who might need a place of rest can find rest. I want to see it be a place where people who are struggling can find a little bit of support and encouragement. And I want to see it be a place where all of us can grow in our faith and find ways to reach out more and more. And I just know that with God's help and God's guidance and your generous support, Church at the Resurrection will be that kind of place for many, many years to come.